Send old Fox to help you out. Well, anyway, I was looking for somebody else really, and I ran across this guy that we're talking about today. I kind of knew him a little bit, and you kind of know him a little bit. I wouldn't call him a friend. He's not really too nice a guy in many ways, but he is sort of famous in another way. You get him always confused with another person. You all figured it out? Now, the Gateways get up here once in a while, and they will sing the song about, now it's not the squirrel one. Don't get that confused. It's the song about the first Jeroboam drive-in church. Remember that? Now, where in the world we get Jeroboam? Where's it Rehoboam? Do you know Jeroboam from Rehoboam? They were twins, right?
No.
They're both kings, right? Yeah. Okay, got that. Let's go back a little bit, get a little bit. You remember David was the king of Israel. Killed the giant, and God put him in king later. King Saul was gone. David got old like a lot of people do, and he had to be replaced by his son. His name was Solomon. And Solomon had one son. He had 1,000 wives and one son. How do you like those odds? I don't know why he had that many wives, so he's supposed to be a smart fellow. But anyway, he had all his wives. One son named Rehoboam. And Rehoboam was supposed to rule over all of Israel. But Solomon, with all these wives, got messed up. Now, if you've got a good wife, you've got a wonderful treasure. A lot of people will go to heaven because they got a good woman. I mean, that's frankly so. If they didn't have that good woman, they'd never made it. That's right. Remember, the little girl asked her, Mom, how come all the angels look like girls? Nobody has a beard. She said, well, if it's a guy, I'd get there by a close shave anyway. Well, anyway, he got that. He was married. He was 70 years old or something like that. You think he's marrying 70-year-old girls, women? I don't think so. I mean, he understood that. I think he's marrying 15 to 20-year-old girls. And he's 70. And they put him right around their little finger. And he's marrying women from pagan culture. They said, oh, honey, whatever they call them, oh, you got to come to worship with us. Oh, please. And so he gave in. And he went down there and he worshiped at the idol temple. Now, you want to realize this, that there's a lot of pressure on you and me to follow something else besides God. There'll be a person, there will be a program, there will be a government, and all kinds of things. You just got to be able to say, my mind is on God. I'm following God. That's it. Well, anyway, he did it. And so God got pretty upset with him. And Solomon became a terrible person toward the last. Worshipping at idols, temples, and sacrificing things to idols, and maybe even allowing babies to be burned, which they did in idol sacrifices before, all because of these young girls. He listened to his older wife, everybody say, no, you know that's not right. We've been married 50 years, we're not having that foolishness, or whatever, but he didn't do that. So Rehoboam was not going to get to keep the kingdom. And so we have a prophet comes along who has a brand new coat. And he takes that coat off. He and Jeroboam, Jeroboam, he was the kid that was an orphan. Well, his dad died and his mother, the widow, raised him. And he had very little, just a poor kid. But he was really good at working and he really was hard, industrious boy. And so Solomon found out that he was that good and he helped put him into a job and he got better in the job. And Jeroboam became kind of an overseer of building a whole city. Rehoboam sat at home. He was the king. To be even one of the little cities. These were little cities. Jeroboam was a little city. Well, Jeroboam got so good at it and all that Solomon got mad at him. He was jealous of him. And Jeroboam had to run clear to Egypt to get away from him. So those are the two wives. So anyway, the prophet was out in the field, and he found Jeroboam, and he took off his jacket, his new coat, whatever it was, and tore it into 12 pieces, and gave him 10. And he said, 1 Kings 11, if you want to follow along, he said, here's the deal. Solomon disobeyed me. Rehoboam is not going to keep the throne, but I'm going to let Solomon live on until he dies. And then I'm going to give you 10 of the 12 tribes of Israel. I actually said 10, and he gets 1. Now, 2 of the tribes became 1, so that's why 2 is 1 sometimes in our Bible speaking, because Benjamin and Judah just melded together like one tribe, but it was 2. But anyway, Jeroboam got 10 of the tribes. Now stop here and think with me. Here's this kid. Grew up in poverty. Had a little seal. God blessed him. Brought him up the ranks. Gave him to be head honcho over rebuilding these cities. And now he's going to give him the rulership. It's a simple question. Where did his goodness come from? Can you figure that out? Can you figure that out? No. We won't be able to cover the whole thing. We may have to have more time next week. But he didn't. Now, isn't that funny? He didn't figure that out. God gave him an opportunity. In the first place, God gave him life, right? In him we live and move, have our being. Acts 17. You think you live a day when God doesn't want you to? When God says that's it, you're going to live on for a few more years? No. God has given everything life. Everything we have has come from God. We taught this morning about the design even of earwax. I mean, God had this whole thing planned out, the whole body, intricately designed, and you are the beneficiary of that. Do you know it? Do you understand it? Do you appreciate it? Everything you have is coming from Him. And so he got the 10 pieces. Now, he said, here's the deal. 1 Kings 11, verse 37. And I will take thee, Jeroboam, and thou shalt reign according to all that thy soul desireth, and shalt be king over Israel. And it shall be, if thou wilt hearken unto all that I command thee, and walk in my ways, and do what is right in my sight, to keep my statutes and my commandments, that David my servant did, I will be with you. Not only is he honored by what he has from God, now he's got a promise, you're going to be a big man. You're going to be great. It's going to be wonderful. I've got wonderful things in mind for you. Do you think he comprehended that? You know, down the road, he did not. And there were a lot of people who recognize, or should recognize, the life they have has come from God, and the blessings that they could have come from God, and they turn away from him. Pay no attention to city life. He said, I will be with you like I was with David. I'll build you a sure house like I built for David. I'll give Israel to thee. And I will for this afflict the seed of David, and not forever. Solomon sought therefore to kill Jeroboam, and Jeroboam ran off to Egypt, and that was kind of the way that went for a while. Now you see that wonderful? You see how good that started out? God was so good, when he gave him, just hand him an empire. Just hand him blessings. I'll make you a big, everybody will know Jeroboam. All heard of Jeroboam. He was that great ruler, yeah. He was like Napoleon or somebody. He didn't turn out that way because he didn't listen to God. I have wondered, and maybe you've wondered, how many blessings you and I have missed because we don't listen to God like we should, maybe. God, I'd like to do this for you. I'd like to give you these blessings, but you don't pay any attention, and so you won't have them. You'll have the opposite. Well, anyway, Solomon died. Rehoboam got to be the new king. And Jeroboam kind of was asked by the people to go represent them to the king. And he said, you know, the taxes are oppressive. We can't pay these all the time. We need some relief. And Rehoboam said, well, I'll take it into consideration. So he went to talk to the old men. And the old men of the kingdom said, if I were you, I'd lower it just a little bit. And they'll think you're wonderful, and they'll be your subjects forever. And the young men said, I wouldn't do that at all. I'd raise it. I'd tell them, I'm tough, and they'll fear you forever. And so, when the time came to answer back, Rehoboam said, I have decided to raise the taxes considerably, and I will even use a whip to make you pay it. And people said, we're no longer your subjects. And 10 of the 12 tribes walked away, led by, guess whom? Jeroboam. God just handed it to you. You were handed blessings. You realize what you owe God? You realize the thanks and the gratitude, the service you owe God because of what He's just given to you? So Jeroboam establishes a city, building cities. He built the city of Shechem and made that his capital. I mean, he just built his own capital. He's a pretty good guy, you see. He can do all of that. And so Rehoboam says, well, I'm not going to let that get by. He sent a tax collector over there to get some taxes, and the people of Israel stoned him with stones and killed him. And so Rehoboam says, well, I'll just get me an army, and I'll show them what's what. And that time a prophet came to Rehoboam and said, don't you dare. I have given the empire to Jeroboam. It's his. You get your hands off of that. You get these 2 tribes here. That's it. And if you go over there, you'll be defeated for sure because I won't be with you. And Rehoboam had enough sense, I'll give him credit, to listen to what God said and obeyed him. And it did him good because he had a good empire. He had plenty of money, plenty of people rule over, and things went fine. He lived a good long life. Everything was great because he listened to God. Now Jeroboam, on the other hand, had a problem. Jeroboam got to thinking, I have 10 of the 12 tribes, but I don't have the temple. Most important building, most important thing in the world to a Jew was the temple. And every year they had to go to the temple. All the men did at least. Supposed to go 3 times, but at least go once. Remember Jesus at 12 years of age got lost in the temple? His parents, clear from 70 miles away, Nazareth, would come down every year to go to the temple. They'd walk all that way, I'm telling you. They'd walk, maybe ride a little donkey, I don't know. It was hard. They didn't ride in a car. He'd get on a bus. And they'd go down because they had to. So Jeroboam says, they have the temple and I don't. And my men are going to go down there and they will mix with those people and they'll like Rehoboam and they won't like me. And so I just can't have this happen. That's human logic. I have to do something to stop this problem. Well, I wonder what he was going to do about all that. Well, he decided what he would do is put up some substitutes. He got the people and said, I've been thinking, and I think this, it's way too far to go to Jerusalem. Your religion should not cost you that much. Your religion should not be that difficult. Nobody, even God, should demand that much of you. You shouldn't be doing all that. And we're human and we're selfish and we're soft. And we say, yeah, I think that is a long walk. I didn't like that walk either, by the way. He said, you don't have to walk anymore. I'm going to have a golden calf made at the southern part and at the northern part of the kingdom, and whichever you're closer to, it's only going to be at the most 25-mile walk, maybe, the most. Some of you only get to walk a mile. Hey, yeah, oh, that's wonderful. We don't have to go to church that long anymore. Isn't that all sorts of, it's just so difficult, and the seats are so hard, whatever. It's like a lady said at the football game yesterday. Where else would I go to pay this kind of, to sit in this kind of sun, in these kind of small seats? Where would I go to pay and do that except go Hawks? I understand that. That's okay. I'm not disparaging people to do that. That's wonderful. That's what it is too. But you know what? We should have no less of an interest and faith in God. When He demands something of us, we will be as energetic and as glad and as enthusiastic to serve Him as we are that. But these folks weren't. Oh, good. We don't have. Where was the voice that said, wait a minute, what's the Bible say? Where's the voice that said, what's God's command? Where's the Bible? I've got the 10 Commandments right here, and it says, no graven image. Where was the person that took his scripture and pointed out what God had said? Nobody. And I read about it. And you know why? I think I know why. You know why. Because the king before them, the government before them, have authorized pagan worship, and they got used to it the last several years. They figured, well, if that's what the government says, or that's what the king did, or that's somebody else did, it must be okay. The king and the government have nothing to do with it at all. God does. And nobody, no king, no power anywhere can make a rule and trump God. It can't happen. It won't happen. It didn't happen in the Bible. And every king that tried that in the Bible, like throwing people in the fire furnace, found out God's more powerful than their silly rule. But you have to have people to stand up all over it. Anyway, it didn't change, but I think people are used to it. And you say, we don't have to do it. Okay, it's easier. It's wonderful. I like that. And we don't have a party made to do that. So he established a substitute religion. Well, he was just doing fine. He said, how many of you want to be preachers? Well, not people want to be, they're more successful. Some said, I don't have a job, I'll make a preacher out of you. Did you know that's the kind of idea a lot of people have? In England, it used to be said, in the heyday of England, if a man had 3 sons, he put the first one in the Navy. He put the second one in business, and the third one so smart to go into ministry. That kind of strange. Because the ministry in England was sponsored by the church. You didn't have to do anything. The government paid your salary in England. Still does, by the way. It's a socialistic type society. And they pay the preachers. You don't have to pay it. And you know what happened when people don't have to pay for the buildings and for the preaching? You know what happened in England? Cathedrals full of nobody. Because it doesn't cost you anything. There's no effort to it. Why would I want to minister in it when it's no big deal? And so a few people wander in to these big cathedrals that can seat thousands and nobody's home. So the government keeps on paying the bill because they pay their own paycheck in England with taxes. That's the way it works. Well, he just got anybody and everything. He's supposed to be a priest, you remember that? No, he said, hey, wait a minute. Priests are supposed to be Levites. But if you would go to the Bible and you point that out, you'd probably call it a Bible thumper. Or old, or out of date, or not up to the times or something. You know, that's what they said. That weirdo, he's causing trouble. He's not tolerant. I don't know what you want to call it. You should get under our skin just a little bit. That's why I think this guy ought to be an example to us, because he did the very thing we see in our society today, of taking away from what God says, and we start saying what God says. You can't say that. You can't read that. In Canada today, as you know, if you read Romans 1, you could be prosecuted and taken to jail for reading Romans chapter 1 in Canada. Canada's our nice neighbor up there at the north. We get along with them just fine. And they're just nice people, but in the governmental law, if you read Romans 1 about what is wrong sexually with men and men, women, women, you read that, you could be put in jail. People have been. America's not far behind, as you know, by what we have in our society. But the king said that, well, they went along, and everything was going fine. Then we got to chapter 13. He was one day himself doing some sacrificial work. Here's a Jew who knew what God wanted, who knew the scriptures, but violated it anyway, and did this very thing that God said not to do. I mean, no other God, that's right, the first part of taking up. How much more? How could you get that messed up? I mean, that's not even obscure law. That's right there, one of the big ones. One of the big 10. A young prophet had been sent. By the part of the good story today. A young prophet had been sent to predict the awful events that would happen to the priest, the king, and all the people involved in the sacrificial system that substituted for God's. We don't know his name. He wasn't mentioned by name. He rode his little donkey up there. He had a little bit of money. He had a donkey. He'd ride in his little donkey. And he got there, and there's the king. And he didn't pay attention to the king. He walked to that altar. And he said, "Oh, altar, altar, Those that are an outsider placing animals, they themselves will be burned on this altar. And he said, if that's true, this altar will split in the middle, and the ashes will fall out. He got about that far in the sermon, and the king said, Jeroboam, he said, grab him. But his arm wouldn't come back. God throws his arm in place. He could see some real problems the rest of his life being like that. Go to bed, try to eat dinner. I mean, he's got real problems. How am I going to? He changed his tune. He said, oh, preacher, pray for my arm. About that time, the altar split in half, and the ashes fell out. That's pretty dramatic, wouldn't you say? And you might think the preacher would say, tough luck. You've got it coming. But a preacher worth his salt, or a Christian worth their faith, or his faith, will pray for the strongest of enemies. And he said, okay, Lord, please heal his arm. So Jeroboam says, I've learned my lesson. Destroy it. There's a verse that says, after all this, he's still. Can you imagine? You're given everything you've got. It happened just like God said. You have not been punished with your arm, not your life, but your arm. It's not working good. Don't you think you would say, dear Lord, forgive me, I'm going to follow you? But how many people have on their sick bed somewhere said, oh Lord, if you just help me, I'll follow you. If Lord, you just keep me safe, if Lord, you just help my child be better, I'll be a true Christian. They're not. He wasn't either. He said, I'd like to have you come and eat dinner with me. And the young prophet said, I can't. God told me to come and preach this sermon and go straight home and don't eat a bite, don't drink a bite, or drink a drop here. Go home. I can't. And he said, sorry to hear that. I'd like to give you something. No. You just try to patch up your own altar, or where you can be better, possibly. Whatever he said, you start at home. We got to put this in before we close. There were two boys watching this. Son of a preacher, prophet of God. Well, they've been messing with the altar, I have no idea. Maybe they got it. Well, preachers' kids aren't perfect. Did you know that? One old preacher said the reason that preachers' kids are bad because they have to play with the congregation's kids. But I don't know where you've been, but when I think about that, that's not a good story. Erase that one. Anyway, no, they're not perfect. That's true. They're not. And they went home and said, Dad, guess what? That young preacher came and preached a sermon, and the altar split, and king had his arm like that, and then he got restored. It was the most marvelous thing we've ever seen. The old prophet said, where'd he go? I went down the highway, so-and-so, heading home. Well, let me go saddle up my dog. You got to go talk to him. So he saddled the donkey, and then the young prophet was sitting under a tree, kind of tired out. Then old prophet rode up and said, you're the guy that was preaching that sermon? He said, I was. I'm glad I found you because you're supposed to come and eat with me. Oh, he said, I can't. God told me, don't eat, don't drink. He said, well, I'm a prophet too. And God told me you're supposed to. And he lied. Says that because he's lying. Now, how do you know a lie from the truth? Well, a lie is always against the Bible. You understand that? No matter who says it or how powerful or the preacher. If it's not the Bible, it's a lie. If they might be sincere, liars sometimes are sincere. Don't misunderstand that. Sometimes they think it's the truth. This guy, when you think of the truth, he was an out-and-out liar. Come home with me. Gabriel said, well, God changed his mind. I'm kind of hungry. You know, if he's in his 20s, he'll starve by now. Yeah, sounds good to go eat. So he went home with the prophet. And in the middle of the dinner, the prophet said, I have a vision from God. You have sinned to come to this house to eat. You won't ever make it home. And so the young man got his donkey. He started down the highway again, and the lion came out of the bushes and grabbed him and killed him. And the people came, Mr. Prophet said there's a funny thing down on the road. There's a donkey standing here, there's a lamb standing there, and there's a dead man right beside him, and nobody's moving at all. Oh, I said, he felt kind of bad that he led that guy in disobedience. So the old prophet went down there, the lamb was still standing, the donkey still standing there. He grabbed the man, put him on his donkey, took him home and buried him anyway. Can you kind of see through all of this that God means what he says? And why should we not do what God says? Because he's got blessings that only he can give? Why would we not do that? But it says of Jeremiah after this last event, in spite of all this, he still went ahead of his idolatry. Why? I guess because he didn't want them to go to Jerusalem and think he'd lose. Are you going to lose when God says you'll keep? Will you keep when God says you'll lose? No. Obey God and follow him. If God is big enough to give him the kingdom, he's big enough to protect him, is he not? Why should we not trust God? Why should we not follow him? Why do we not obey him? Whatever God says in his word, that's the truth. If anybody varies from that, that's not right. Again, this example, I wouldn't really look for Jeroboam to start with. I found him, I'm kind of glad I did. You kind of knew him too a little bit, didn't you? In the first Jeremiah church. Are you following God? Our Psalm 373 has this conviction. Where he leads me, I will follow. If he says it, I'll do it. If he says repent, I'll do that. Confess, I'll do it. Baptize, I'll do it. Be faithful, I'll do it. Because he said so. I'm just going to do that because that's what he said. And anything less is going to be a problem in our life. Jeroboam found that out. And continued that. The young prophet found it out. Well, I thought he told me the rest of the business. I don't know. So this might be a song of challenge, maybe a song of decision in your life. As we sing that first stanza, 373.